My name is Riccardo Galletta. I lead the emerging hydrogen markets team at the agency, and I will be introducing and concluding this webinar. Before going into the details of the webinar itself and the content, let me remind you about a few housekeeping rules. First of all, just be informed that the webinar is recorded, and actually you will be able to access both the video recording and the slides presented at the webinar tomorrow from our website. Beyond that, please be aware that your microphone will be muted and the Teams chat will be disabled. Yet there is a way, of course, to engage you in this webinar, and this comes through Slido. So you'll be able to ask questions using the Slido link that you will soon see on the Teams chat. You can start asking your questions at any time during the webinar, and the questions will be addressed during the Q&A session at the end of the panel discussions. If you like questions posed by other participants, please do so by clicking on the like sign, because we will try to select those who attracted the highest interest. Regarding today's session, you see the agenda on screen. After my short introduction, I will give the floor to my colleague Vasilis Papandreou, who will present us the conclusions and the recommendations from the ACER Hydrogen Market Monitoring Report 2025, which we published just a few days ago on the 2nd of December. Following this presentation, my colleague Cila Bartok will moderate a panel discussion hosting distinguished speakers from several parts of the hydrogen value chain: production, supply, demand, and network operator. At the end of the panel, there will be a Q&A where we, ACER colleagues and the panelists, will take your questions. And before the end of the webinar, I will just share with everyone some concluding remarks. Before digging into the details of the findings of our market monitoring report on hydrogen markets, let me share with you some key messages to serve really as an introduction. The move towards hydrogen connects to ambitious Europe's objective on decarbonization, which also relate to very concrete targets. And building a hydrogen market almost from scratch, it's not an easy task. We have realized in this couple of years of monitoring. Building such a market requires clear and consistent policies and regulations, a strong coordination also to overcome the technical and financial challenges, while at the same time ensuring an efficient scale-up of the hydrogen economy. Of course, there are also effective funding mechanisms which are needed in order to support the growing of this economy, which is otherwise not able on its own to flourish in the economy. At the same time, given this is a nascent market, it's very important to continuously monitor the development of the progress in national markets and at European level, and assess the effectiveness of policies in order to be ready to readjust them in case it is needed to reach the desired targets. With these few messages, I will smoothly give the floor to my colleague Vasilis for a more detailed presentation of the recommendations and the findings in our Hydrogen Market Monitoring Report. Vasilis, you have the floor, and everyone enjoy the presentation and the panel later on.
Thank you, Riccardo. And thank you all for joining us in today's webinar. For the next 10 minutes, I will try to briefly describe the findings of this report and the key recommendations. The report was prepared by our hydrogen monitoring team with valuable inputs from the national regulators and the European Commission, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank them all. So where does the market start? In 2024, an additional 104 megawatts of electrolysers was installed in Europe, and the total electrolyzer capacity reached 308 megawatts. It doubled since 2022, and while one can say that this is a kind of impressive growth rate on a year-on-year basis, it's barely enough to put Europe on track for achieving the very ambitious targets, as Ricardo mentioned. For the new market to officially be created, a clear framework and policies are needed, and this has largely been the case at the European level, where the publication of the Low Carbon Delegated Act last month nearly fulfilled the puzzle of regulations and policy measures. However, at national level, implementation still is lagging behind. For example, until now, only 2 member states, Denmark and Ireland, have reportedly transposed fully the Renewable Energy Directive, which sets the targets for the so-called renewable fuels of non-biological origin, which largely depicts hydrogen. By the way, the deadline for the transposition of the directive was May 2027. At the same time, some frontrunner countries, with a leading example of Germany, move forward with creating the framework for the future hydrogen market. The delays in implementation of the agreed upon policies and regulations, of course, undermine the confidence of investors and further delay deployment in the market. Of course, the main barrier for the development of the market is the high cost of renewable hydrogen and the low carbon hydrogen. Currently, the cost of renewable hydrogen is approximately 4 times on average higher than the fossil hydrogen, and prospects are also uncertain. The lower than expected deployment of hydrogen has not brought the economies of scale that could enable further cost reductions. At the same time, renewable electricity cost, which is a big part of the production cost of renewable hydrogen, is not looking. They're not cost reductions on this side are not looking great, and actually the renewable electricity has increased lately. Low carbon hydrogen produced by methane with carbon capture and storage can be half the price of renewable hydrogen, but those estimates come with great uncertainties, especially in terms of the cost of transporting and storing permanently the captured emissions. Experience with the technology is still very limited, and infrastructure needs might be great as well. Low carbon hydrogen produced by electrolysis using nuclear electricity might also be a solution for creating the market. However, the cost depends largely on the electricity supply, and this can be also very high. Overall, taking into account also the outlooks for the natural gas prices and the ETS prices in the near term, means that the cost gap will be maintained in the near term, which means that further action is necessary. Turning to infrastructure, we have 3 cases at the moment where tariffs have been established in Germany and the Netherlands, and in Denmark we have largely expected tariffs for the network by the network developer, which brings the estimated cost for transporting hydrogen via pipelines at around 30 cents per kilogram. This is quite small compared to the production cost. However, again, there are certain uncertainties. The recent developments in the Netherlands and Germany with regards to cost estimates that were revised upwards, together with the uncertain future demand, raise concerns about the sustainability of these tariffs and the stability of the assumptions underlying these tariffs. I will move towards the demand sector, and here we have limited information coming mainly from the European Hydrogen Bank auctions, where we can see that there are sectors at the moment that are willing to pay a price for renewable, for clean hydrogen, renewable or low carbon hydrogen that is close to the production costs of renewable hydrogen. So focus on these sectors could further accelerate the market. I will close my presentation with a few of the key recommendations that are presented in the report. First, implementation of the agreed upon policies is crucial in order to, as I said earlier, give the clarity and certainty to investors to proceed with their projects. Second, the acceleration of the implementation of the decarbonization package is also important, since it will give regulators and network operators the necessary powers in order to proceed with establishing the infrastructure and the market where and as necessary. Third, the market will need, at the early stages at least, will still need some support and funding. So in order to effectively use those funds, target into the sectors and the projects that can rapidly provide scale up is essential. Fourth, low carbon hydrogen can indeed facilitate the creation of the market in the early stages. However, its role needs to be further clarified. And with regards to methane-based low-carbon hydrogen, risk assessment is necessary, especially with regards to costs, so that unwanted lock-in effects on fossil fuel and technology are avoided. Lastly, the hydrogen network will be important in certain jurisdictions and certain markets, especially as volumes scale. And however, careful planning is of utmost importance, planning that can be adjustable and aligning with the market realities in order to enable the development of the assets with the lowest risk possible, which will facilitate financing and in the end avoid stranded investments. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and I will give the floor to Chila and our distinguished guest speakers for the next part of the discussion. Thank you very much for your attention. Chila, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vasilis. And then I'm also welcoming you from my side. My name is Chila Bartok, and I'm heading the Gas, Hydrogen and Retail Department at ACER. I would like to call your attention before we dive into the panel that we have a Slido tool, and through that you could ask questions to us. This could be related to the presentation or eventually the discussions that we are going to have right now. With that, I would like then to move on and to present our distinguished guest. I will start with Pierre Duyvezat. Pierre is Deputy Managing Director at Natran. He has been also appointed as ENTSOG's president, and then he will be talking about the challenges of the infrastructure, hydrogen infrastructure operators. Next, I will present Geert Tjarks, Managing Director at EWE Hydrogen GmbH. And then Geert was working on a hydrogen strategy and business strategy at EWE. He will present us his project on the coastline, and then I'm very curious what would be the producer's angle when we come to hydrogen. And finally, but not last, we have Daina Medda. She's Senior Project Manager and Business Partner for Hydrogen at Stahl Holding, and she will be talking about the industrial users perspective. when it comes to hydrogen. Now, to start or just say a few words, what we see, and then our reporting shows that eventually hydrogen during this ramp-up phase is characterized by a couple of risks. One, which is the regulatory uncertainty, or rather implementation risks that we are facing within the EU context, but also we are concerned about industrial competitiveness when it comes, to the prices of renewable hydrogen. So I would move towards all of you one by one, and I would like that you describe your project on hydrogen, and then what are the main challenges of this project that you are working on, and what would be the recipe, or what is the recipe for success? And I would start with Geert to present the producer perspective.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So as you said, we are a producer for green hydrogen, or for hydrogen in general. So we are under construction of a 300 megawatt system in the northwest of Germany, hopefully in operation by the end of 2027, in combination with an underground storage facility and pipeline infrastructure to ensure the entire supply chain. So what is our recipe? Actually, the reason why we can do that project is that we are part of the IPCEI framework. So we are funded on the CapEx side, pretty heavily funded, above 50% in funding quote. And that is mainly the reason why we can do it. What are the challenges? Of course, still challenges coming from the upcoming operation side, so from the OPEX side. We still see too high prices for hydrogen, especially, and that's very important after, when you have the view on Germany after the date of the end of 2027, because then RFMBO criteria will change, so regulatory framework will change, and actually after 2027 hydrogen prices will rise, especially for German producers, which means right now we are actually right on the edge with our prices. We are feasible to deploy or to supply customers, but after certain framework kicks in, the price will rise. That comes from RFMBO, and that comes from grid fees, stuff like that.
Thank you. Then I'm turning to Diana, and I would like to get the industrial consumer perspective. So what is the project that you're working on, the challenges, and what is the recipe for success?
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. My name is Diana. I'm representing SHS, the fourth largest steel producer in Germany. Well, the biggest aim of SHS is to leave the biggest ecological footprint. We have the so-called holistic transformation Power for Steel. It's the biggest brownfield decarbonization project in Europe. And also we are funded, so we received 2.6 billion funding. That means we are on the one hand forced and obliged to have this ecological green steel footprint. On the other hand, for sure, we wanted to be the most driven part for our future. The plan of SHS is to build a new DRI plant, two electric arc furnace to replace the existing traditional steel production. And we have separated our plan in two phases. And one phase, I think most of you have seen now at the press release in August. The first phase was to purchase green hydrogen. This was the biggest tender I think SHS made ever. And I'm very happy to be today here. This tender I was leading together with my colleague Lars Klein. And we were very pleased to announce and to have this partnership built up with Verso. That means we have now a contract over 10 years with a French company, Verso. And we have the aim to produce 6,000 tons in the first step green steel over the Mosaic, the local grid route, until 2032. And then we are going to gradually ramp up until 120,000 tons. The main challenges, what we are facing, I mean, also Gerd already said, are the high OPEX costs in Europe and also in Germany, especially in the energy and hydrogen prices. I mean, honestly speaking, the production costs currently for green steel, they are much higher than conventional steel production. And on the customer side, we do not see currently the willingness to pay for this high cost, the so-called green premium product. Yeah.
Thank you. Then I'm turning to Pierre, and then Pierre, please bring us to speed on H2Med, and then please share your experiences, the challenges, and then the potential recipes for success when it comes to that project.
Yes, good morning to everyone, and thank you, Xila, for inviting the H2Med Consortium, which I have the honor and pleasure to represent this morning at this webinar. I mean, in a nutshell, H2Med, it's a strategic corridor between Portugal and Spain, so a region where we can anticipate advantageous H2 production cost through France, and then ending in Germany, which will be a net consuming hydrogen country. This project brings together 5 TSOs, REN, the Portuguese TSO, Enagás, Terega and Natran, and OG in Germany, and it intends to move around 2 million tons of hydrogen in the next decade. So, I mean, roughly 10% of the European consumption. So, I mean, H2Med is clearly a pipeline project, partly onshore, partly offshore, but it's much more than a pipeline project, as it really aims to be one of the main elements to develop the hydrogen market in Europe. And I think it is one of the most, if not the most advanced corridor in Northwest Europe. If I come to our main challenge, well, if we ask the engineers, they will have many interesting challenges to share. And I would add that working in a real European environment, it's something really an enrichment and source of motivation. But if I come to our main challenge today, it's really managing to match the development of the infrastructure with the growth of production and demand. And what is really critical is that, I mean, building such an infrastructure is a lengthier project than building electrolysers or adapting a plant. I know these are not very easy, but for a pipeline, the permitting and building time is longer. Then we can't really scale up a pipeline, which means we have to build the initial design immediately, which means that we also, the initial investment is quite significant. And then the last challenge is that today no consumer or no midstreamer can really commit to the what is necessary as volumes. So our recipes, very quickly, our main recipe, first recipe is cooperation. Cooperation among all the parties involved in this project, which is really particularly important for a cross-border project of this scale. Second, it's work closely with the industry, with our future clients. Last year, we've launched a call for interest, which was quite successful with 168 companies involved. Then we've put in place an alliance with all the more than 50 interested parties in the project to work together on advocacy and what could be the commercial terms of our project. And the idea is to go forward progressively to commitments. As it's mentioned in ACER's report and was mentioned, we still, commitments are still quite low in these projects today. And the third recipe is working with the public authorities to have the backing of them so that we can have this project moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Pierre. So now we can move to the second round of questions, and I would be proposing very different questions to all the three of you. So if I'm moving to you, Geert, to collect the producer perspective, we see that there is a significant cost gap, and you were also mentioning that in relation to the project. And then we don't see how eventually renewable hydrogen would reduce costs in the short midterm, or that is unclear. Eventually, take some elements of innovation review on this gap. So from your experience, what you believe that how we could decrease this cost gap, which aspects of the reductions are the most challenging in your view, And that could include also the regulatory one, which you were mentioning already. So
yeah.
how to decrease, give you.
How to decrease costs, yeah. Biggest question of all, right? So actually, when it comes to finance of these projects, there are two aspects which are related to cost. One is the actual cost, so the actual CapEx and OpEx cost, and the other one is risks. And what we do have to understand is that risks has an impact on the cost of the hydrogen in the end. And right now we are seeing a lot of risks, right? And especially on the producing side, without a market, without a liquid market, you have to add a lot of risk to your project, and that will increase prices, right? And if you see on the German level, in Germany, we have this core network approach where the German government covers partly the risk of the pipeline infrastructure. And the reason is, or the outcome was that we saw a lot of FIDs for pipeline infrastructure within Germany. So there you can see if you address risks, then it's easier to get financing for your project. So for the producing side and for the hydrogen price, again, risks is a main aspect. And the problem from the framework is, in our view, that this framework is pretty strict right from the beginning, right? So if you have a look on RFMBO, on renewable hydrogen, actually that is, let's say, a premium plus product, right? That's the gold standard for producing renewable hydrogen. It wants to make sure that you really decrease CO2 by 100%, right? And of course, if you do that right from the beginning, or if you're forced to do that strict rule right from the beginning, then of course hydrogen will be more expensive, right? That's the reason. Just a remark, you actually can produce low carbon hydrogen via electrolysers, right? So in your report you mentioned low carbon hydrogen coming from fossil-based energy carriers, but you can do it via an electrolyzer as well. And if you just reduce it by 70%, so that's the idea of low carbon hydrogen, reducing CO2 just by 70%, then of course prices will decrease, right? So from our perspective, having on every level, and I mean level from certification of the hydrogen RFMBO, for example, as I mentioned, grid fees for the electricity side, for the gas side. If you want to seek for perfect solutions right from the beginning, that means risks will increase on the producer side, and that will mean higher hydrogen prices. So if you ask me, I would really highlight giving more flexibility to the projects, really give them the opportunity to do on the technical level optimization. By the way, RFMBO doesn't consider any technical aspects of electrolyzers, right? The technical aspects are not included in that framework. So it never asks for technical reasons. So in the end, giving the projects the flexibility to optimize, especially on the technical level, and with this flexibility, I'm pretty sure we can decrease costs for renewable and low carbon hydrogen in the near future.
Thank you very much, Gert. So I'm then turning to Diana, and I would like to dig further into the willingness to pay and then what is happening there. We understood while we were working on our report that in Germany there is an idea to sort of look into the key sectors, strategic sectors that eventually could absorb this kind of price difference in terms of willingness to pay, about which you were a little bit complaining. But could you just get us a little bit closer to that, and then also what you were discussing when it came to the to your agreement? So what was how this agreement was driven then, the one that you signed for 10 years for RFMBO hydrogen, and then how do you see that the industry could bridge this kind of price difference and the ultimate end users could bridge this this difference of high-priced hydrogen?
Sheila, thank you. Well, currently, honestly, no customers can absorb higher costs of renewable hydrogen due to missing instruments, especially what I'm meaning is the lack of lead markets. That means consumer needs to pay the higher price because the margins of steel industry does not allow higher cost. Yeah, no part of value chain can be a higher cost. For example, very nice example is the price of a car. It needs to reflect lower CO2 footprint with premium, with price premium. And maybe also a best practice example coming live on stage from us, from Saarstahl. I mean, the Deutsche Bahn, they started a tender because they needed steel for the rails. And we're very happy because our French subsidiary are producing green certified steel, the so-called less certified. But Sheila, we had no chance to win this tender because the focus was totally on the price in this tender. So you see, it's not working. On the one hand, we are able to produce this wonderful green steel, but on the other hand, even the Deutsche Bahn has set up their criteria to procure I will say the cheapest steel. This cannot work. And I think the second question from you was what has driven us as SHS to commit and to sign such a long-lasting, 10-year lasting contract. On the one hand, I think I said in the beginning, we were somehow obliged because of our funding. So hydrogen ramp up is for sure a big part of our funding approval. But on the other hand, we stated very clear we wanna leave the biggest ecological footprint. So hydrogen is a clear major part of SHS strategy. And I mean, hydrogen is a new commodity, and a new commodity needs somehow new contract models and also new ways of working. And I think many have seen the big players around the market, but for such a complexity of tender process, it was crystal clear in the very first beginning of the tender that we have to think totally maybe new, totally different, totally flexible. And with Verso Energy, we can very clearly state it, we have found a very innovative company who first listened to our demands, and they are very flexible and able to meet our demands in such a long-term partnership. I mean, this is normally not used in common practice that you are signing such a long-lasting contract on a new commodity. With so many unsecures on the market, also politically wise. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's very clear. Now I'm turning to you, Pierre, and you already mentioned while you were presenting the project the importance of cooperation. And indeed, we see that the market or the producers and the users are facing several risks, which then it translates to volume risks on your end. So how do you see the ramp-up phase? Are operators willing to undertake certain risks when they are developing the network, and how this risk could be mitigated by the operators? And what is then the role of planning to remain prudent and cautious and potentially also so flexible in developing the infrastructure while also watching after the challenges that are faced on the different parts of the value chain?
Yes, risks and planning, really two important questions for us. I mean, yes, of course, we are ready to take some risk, but we have to share the risk. Just maybe a few words on the current phase on our project, which is a study phase. Roughly, we will be spending a few tens of millions of euros already. And this is really highly risky money. And so in this phase, thanks to the TENI regulation, all the projects have the PCI status and have been selected by CINEA. So this risk today is shared with the, I would say, with the European authorities. And this is really of great value for the project. And this is facilitate the decisions with our shareholders to have this money at risk, at very highly risk at this stage of the project. But if we move forward, if we move to FID, of course, the amounts of money will be much higher. There will be some different risk. I'm not talking here about the technical risk, for example, the construction risk, but there will be some commercial risk, which is linked, as you said, to the ramp up of volume risk. And this is clearly a risk where we will need to be shared, and we'll need some strong backing. What do we do today? As I've said, we try to work closely with the clients, with the industry. I've mentioned the alliance that we've put in place, and the idea really is to try to get some commitments for FID, but we are sure these commitments, almost sure, will not be sufficient to take the decision. So we need public de-risking tools. The different projects are working with this, but also our association, INOH, is also working with the European Commission and other parties to try to find the best solutions. So today, EU has already created one of these tools, the intertemporal cost allocation, ICA, which is a good tool as it will help managing this ramp-up phase. Of course, to have this ICA working, we need state guarantees. And we could mention that, for example, in Germany, this has been put in place, and the principle today is working in Germany. But this is a national tool working in Germany, and for cross-border project like the one I'm presenting today, H2Med, we need probably European mechanism of guarantee or transnational mechanism of guarantee to solve and share the risk. And of course, this is, as I said, what we are working on. Then you mentioned the role of planning. Clearly, it's essential. Why is it very important for us? Because we need coordination. First of all, this is a complex project, cross-border project. So we need a strong coordination between TSOs, governments, and industry. And clearly, timelines, standards, and expectation must be aligned. So this is one of the role of planning, is to help this coordination. But more than that, we see that more and more the energy carriers are more and more interdependent. I mean, electricity, gas, and so tomorrow hydrogen. And the link is not a one-way link. It will be more and more, well, as we are mentioned, green hydrogen. So it's the link between electricity and hydrogen. But all energy carriers will be more and more interdependent in the future. And that's also a role of planning, is to try to anticipate and have the best solution in place for all energy carriers.
Thank you very much. I will then do a very, very quick round towards all of you. And my question is, what would be your biggest wish in order to sort of improve or drive a bit more dynamically the ramp up of the hydrogen market? And I would give you the floor one by one. Just share with us one single thought. Gert, what do you think?
Yeah, as I said, giving more flexibility to the projects, and on the short term, especially on RFMBO, by extending the additionality deadline by a few years.
Daina, what do you think?
Additional, I would say the premium becomes easier to justify when, for example, carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM, increase the cost of high carbon imports, for instance. So clearly, stronger brand and stronger political support to that.
Thank you. Pierre, what do you think?
Well, if it's a one wish, I have to take a step back, and I won't be selfish. And I think what is key is to have a clear and strong industrial policy in Europe, because this will make demand, this will make offer, this will help developing the hydrogen market. If I was selfish, of course, I would come to de-risking mechanism. But I think if it's only a one wish, it's really supporting our European industry.
Thank you very much to all. And I think at this point, we can move on to the question and answer session. And I will start with the first question, which would be addressed then to Daina. I think you already talked about the difficulty, the willingness to pay for green steel. But the question is then what you can do since you have a long-term contract for green hydrogen, how you can sort of help the take-up of the produced green steel. You were mentioning the lead markets already, but what else could be done? How do you see that? What are the ideas that you are discussing at Sarstar?
I think for sure incentives. Yes, we should offer incentives. That you enable the green steel as a clear and strong brand, so that you can be somehow proud when you're saying, here, I have the green footprint. You need for sure on public procurement demands, low carbon materials, something like that. Yeah. and customers should have legal net zero obligations. I mean, this shift the baseline and narrows the premium gap, I would say.
Thank you. The second question could go to more of you, and then it's a question about hydrogen purity. So, to what extent is the lack of purity for the standard purity for public hydrogen networks is a barrier in concluding offtake contracts, and who should take the lead resolving that? So I'm kind of looking into it again. So like so to what extent is the lack of purity standard for public hydrogen networks a barrier in concluding offtake contracts? Or whether it is a problem for it. And I'm opening more freely the floor to those of you who can respond.
Well, what I can say as a TSO, this is also a risk we couldn't take. I mean, being, how can I say, blamed for not delivering a product that wouldn't be at the standards. I mean, if it relies to a misconduct from our role, we could assume that. But what we cannot assume is to have a discrepancy between the gas quality which would be injected in our network and the requirement by our customers. So I think here mainly we have to see what the customers want and try to adjust to the quality of what the customers want or need. And of course, a higher purity will be a bit higher cost for hydrogen.
Thank you. Then the next question goes to you, Geert, about the project, the viability of project, how you can create viable project, and then is the capex aid is a must-have in order to raise those projects. What else you would think that is necessary to succeed?
Well, maybe. First of all, it's important to understand that the development of the hydrogen market is way too complex to address it with only one measure, right? So it's important that we have to understand that we need different measures who are synchronized and somehow connected. And funding, of course, is one measure which works, and especially for the ACER projects, that was the basic idea to give at the very early stage of the market, give funding with high quotes. That will make projects viable. So that was the main idea, but of course, and that's the main reason actually why we could deploy. So the funding for that project for that market phase was crucial, but it's pretty clear that in the future you can't give these high subsidies to the projects. So of course, you need to find different measures or combinations of measures to bring down costs, especially for the OPEX, for the operation side, right? So giving funding at the very early stage helps to decrease the risk capital, which you have to address in the beginning, but it doesn't decrease risks in general, right? You still have the same risk on your supply contract. You just decrease the capital in upfront, right? So again, that is one measure which helps right in the beginning, but in the midterm and in the long term, we need to find different other measures which are synchronized and combined to bring down costs.
I think this is an excellent point. So maybe, I don't know whether Diana or Pierre, you would like to chip in on this. We also see that there is a challenge, like how you would synchronize the measures. And then you also have a challenge that maybe you have also too many sort of measures, that would kind of also create a challenge for the companies to make it work. So what would you sort of advise to policymakers in the first place in order to have some support or kind of an easier pathway to go on with your projects? What do you see necessary when it comes to synchronization of projects? Or measures, sorry, not projects, synchronization of measures.
Well, it's just what I intend to say with you say what would be my main policy ask. I really need that we need a strong industry and strong demand. That would be, I mean, there is a measure that has to be, if my idea is that if we have a strong industrial policy, and of course, the willingness to go to net zero, this will bring, obviously, we will need a hydrogen market. That's obvious because it's storable, because it's you need it for some of the sectors. And so this will help ramp up and developing the project. And then, of course, you have to look at the different part of the value chain. And regarding the transmission, as it's, as I said, a lengthier project than the other ones, you'll need some specific measures for the, for example, for us, which is the de-risking mechanism. And so we can observe that what has been put in place in Germany helps the project moving forward. Of course, you have to adapt the rhythm of this project. It doesn't mean that you have to go without looking at what's happening on the market, but it's really a catalyst for these projects to move forward. So I would suggest really working on the industrial part, the customers, and then adapting your support mechanism to each part of the value chain. And for us, it's helping de-risking the initial investment.
Very clear. Dana, would you like to come in? Yes, please.
Yeah, maybe adding what Pierre said in regards of value chain. If we're looking to one big part of the value chain is the procurement, it makes sense to fragment somehow a clear certification and guarantees of origin if you are sourcing the materials, and also especially to the quality, the carbon intensity, and the purity. I mean, there should be a clear measure to have this kind of improvement of guarantees of origin, and for sure on the other hand, the incentives to look on these measures. Yeah.
Indeed.
Maybe if I can jump in.
Please.
And add something else, we also see that for gas or for electricity, we have midstreamers, so the market is organized. And today we've launched our call for interest, and we've had a lot of interest from producers and from end consumers. We understand that it's not easy for them to commit. Nevertheless, what we don't have really organized today, it's midstreamers like we have in gas or electricity, which could combine producers and or consumers. And so they would be our naturally direct consumers, as they would reserve the capacity, book the capacity in our networks. But as the market is not organized yet, this part of the value chain is not organized. And I guess that for some consumers also, it would be more comfortable if they had some midstreamer organized, because they would be naturally going towards these midstreamers to buy the hydrogen, rather than having to go directly to producers.
Indeed. Indeed, these are very good points. And of course, you have elements of this early phase market issues, and then that means that the instruments are also maybe more, you have more difficulties, you have less players to pick that up. And in addition, then you would need to focus at the various parts of the value chain, and in particular demand to sort of to corroborate eventually, or kind of stabilize the direction for this industry. There's a question, I think, to you, Gert, about the difference in grid fees for electrolysers. And for example, in Germany, the electrolysers are exempted, while in other member states, this is not the case. Is there a case to discount grid fees for electrolysers due to their role in the renewable energy system? What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, that's the big discussion we right now have in Germany. So can you argue a discount for electrolysers if they have a potential to decrease system costs in an energy system, right? That is the biggest question.
That is right more now, or less, yeah. And then you have lots of measures surrounding the congestion in the electricity system. And of course, you have to look also those design elements and how those are coming together in a comprehensive way.
Exactly. And one very important aspect, it is, of course, connected to the grid fees on the hydrogen gas side, right? So for the pipeline infrastructure. So we are talking right now about the electricity side, because the biggest question is, where do you want to structure energy, right? Do you want to structure it on the electricity side, or do you want to structure it on the hydrogen side? And we think, as an, of course, hydrogen producer, we think structuring should happen on the hydrogen, on the gas side, especially when it comes to seasonal storage, and that needs to be reflected by the grid fees. And that is still, I would say, still a challenge on the German level as well. You're right that there is an exemption until the August of 2029, but after that date, we are facing the entire or the complete grid fees in Germany as well, and that makes it way more expensive, right? And if we can't address the potential for hydrogen in the system, or the potential for decreasing system cost, then discounts will be challenging, right? But this connection, what is the potential for electrolysers in the electricity system to bring down system cost? What is the idea of structuring electricity on the gas or on the electricity side? And with these two aspects, we should find a mechanism which is actually supporting that idea, right? And right now, we don't see that mechanism.
Very good. Thank you very much. This is also a very complex question. I think it would also be important that in the coming year, the experiences that are collected with this discount are somehow, collected, discussed, and then to see, what would be the appropriate measures that might be needed to go forward.
Sila, if I may jump in again.
Please.
No, it's just regarding our project. Also, what we are looking at is to see whether there could be some storages along the route, our corridor from Iberic Peninsula to Germany, and probably there are some project that some storage company, Storengy, for example, is looking at converting some storages along the route, and I think we're convinced that this is an added value for producers and consumers to have on the routes some kind of flexibility that could be managed, because it also reduces the risk and the cost for the whole system.
Excellent. Thank you for jumping in. A very final question before we are closing, and then the question goes like this. So maybe there is a lack of market fundamentals at this point in time in Europe, which then does not allow Europe to meet the targets. We were not really talking about the targets, but we have very ambitious hydrogen targets. So what kind of fundamentals are needed in your view to enable investment and offtakes? But you can also, I allow you to also to reflect on the targets and bring these targets vis-a-vis the fact that we are in an early stage of market development. So feel free to reflect on this question more broadly. This is the last one that we are going to take from the audience.
A clear, maybe Sheila, I think we can only repeat what already has been said. Somehow we need a clear European hydrogen strategy with clear European incentives and lead markets, which will enable Europe as a very strong common partner to build up this hydrogen ramp up together. That means for sure also the politics with it.
Thank you. Other quick reactions before I'm closing then the Q&A session?
I mean, of course, it's important to have visibility. It's so huge investment that stability in the regulation and visibility is key for our investors.
Indeed. Then I think we got to the end of the panel and Q&A session. I'm very grateful for your inputs and for the discussion. So thank you very much for supporting us today. And I'm passing on the floor to Ricardo, who will be closing the webinar. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Thanks a lot, Cila. Thanks a lot, Gerd, Daina, and Pierre. The debate was very lively, and also with the questions. Let me try to sum up the main highlights in order to conclude this webinar. So it emerged that from the market, actually, so from your direct experience, there are huge challenges to this nascent hydrogen market. So it's risky. This has repercussions on the cost, both in terms of OPEX and CAPEX, and there is still a low willingness to pay when it comes to renewable hydrogen. This needs to be put also in the background of the big overarching objective with the reduction of CO2 emissions. How to make things stick together? So solutions and wishes. In terms of the wishes, we heard that there's a need from European institutions, policymakers, to give a strong support to competitiveness, and that has to come at political level. There has to be a support to this transition, which has to be very clear. It may require also revising certain elements of the strategic approach in order to align to what is realistic, at the same time giving clarity. Then, when it comes to solutions, we have heard several actually good working practices, which could also be further reinforced. We heard about funding, public funding, which is needed in order to kickstart certain projects, and the ones we heard today also very much relied on this public funding. At the same time, the market can do something on its own. Several contractual solutions can help, incentives for the use of green hydrogen, but also obligations, quotas, targets. Another solution lies in risk sharing and coordination. So the risks, when they are too high, like in an emerging market like hydrogen, cannot be handled in an easy way by the counterparties. This is also more true when it comes to cross-border projects. Therefore, a risk-sharing approach, which is European, is also something that the market is looking forward. At the technical level, there is also a wish that a solution is found when it comes to optimizing projects, when it comes, for example, to the application of RFMBO rules, which are seen by certain parts of the market as being too strict and leading to higher cost in a couple of years when they become fully operational. Other elements have been mentioned, like the importance of storage, of course, and then the political will descending down all the elements of the value chain, making the transition toward the hydrogen economy happening. With all those elements, I think we have depicted a very complex but comprehensive status of the hydrogen market. We as ACER will continue, of course, monitoring the market and be present in all public debates. If you are interested in following our activities and publication, of course, you can always rely on our website and contact us also through the social medias. Let me now really close the webinar by reminding you that from tomorrow you will be able to find the recording of today's webinar and the slides presented on our website. And let me thank again the whole ACER team and the panelists for the very interesting session today. Again, thanks a lot and have a good rest of the day.